This was more than just a marriage. It was control posing as faith, loyalty enforced by fear, and silence demanded as spiritual practice. For years, millions of Sister Wives fans thought they knew Janelle Brown. She seemed steady and reasonable. She didn't cry on TV, beg for love, or want attention. Janelle seemed calm, almost untouched by the messy emotions around Kody Brown and his family. But what viewers missed was the cost of her silence. Behind Janelle's calm voice was a woman slowly realizing her hopeful marriage had become something else. Partnership felt like pressure, spirituality felt limited, family felt like a hierarchy. This wasn't the marriage Janelle wanted. She joined the Brown family believing in shared duty, respect, and freedom. She thought women could be strong and faithful and that a husband should lead fairly, not with force. But over time, her beliefs were tested as Kody didn't suddenly change. Control isn't obvious, it sneaks in through expectations, rewards, punishments, and changing rules. At first, it seems like good leadership, but soon it feels like too much pressure, turning into blatant control. Janelle noticed things others ignored, like disagreement became disloyalty, love became conditional, and independence became defiance. Faith wasn't bringing them together but was used to keep them quiet. Kody talked about respect, but he meant obedience. When the wives questioned him, he got angry, and when they wanted something, he heard whining. Choosing their kids over him felt like betrayal. Janelle saw this in her marriage and her family. She watched Christine suffer from neglect, Mary shrink from rejection, and Robin become Kody's favorite. Yet, Janelle stayed because leaving a spiritual marriage feels like leaving your faith, your identity, and your righteous life. She wasn't weak but used to suffering, believing sacrifice was part of life and patience would pay off. Staying calm would bring balance. She thought emotions clouded things. But strength isn't silence, which Janelle proved. The more Kody demanded loyalty, the less she felt connected. The more he wanted unity, the more broken the family became, and the more he spoke of respect, the less she felt it. This wasn't obvious abuse with constant fights. It was something quieter but dangerous, like control through disappointment, guilt, and neglect. Kody didn't always yell but would disappear instead, which was loud enough. Janelle realized keeping the peace meant losing herself. She had to hide her needs, soften her limits, and ignore her gut feelings. She questioned what faith felt like for years, which caused confusion, tension, and being trapped. Janelle wasn't mad or ready to leave, but she was awake. And once you know the truth, you can't ignore it. Seeing how family meant control, how decisions were made alone but called collective, and how faith justified distance. The wives were praised if they obeyed and blamed if they didn't. Janelle realized the marriage depended on everyone playing their part, and hers was to be agreeable, prioritizing everyone else. She always came last. That realization came slowly. Before, Kody wanted total agreement even for beliefs. There was no room for being different or choosing your path, which crossed a line for Janelle. Because she believed in independence, marriage should make you better, not erase you. Seeing Kody's vision involved obedience. For the first time, Janelle didn't change herself to fit, didn't yell, threaten, or cause problems. She just stopped pretending like everything was okay. That was the beginning of the end. By ending the illusion and seeing this marriage as more controlling than holy made everything clear. The doubts she had buried surfaced. The questions she ignored needed answering, and the quiet strength she had shown turned into clear vision. This was a system she stopped believing in. And for the first time, Janelle Brown wasn't trying to survive, but planning to leave. Janelle Brown wasn't one to shout to be heard. She didn't need the spotlight, didn't measure love by how much attention she got, and knew that being loud wasn't the same as being strong. Instead, Janelle watched right from the start of her plural marriage. Janelle figured out something important. In a complicated family like theirs, the person with the real power isn't the loudest, it's the one who makes the rules. And after a while, she started seeing who that was. At first, Janelle thought Kody was doing his best, even if he wasn't perfect. She saw him trying to juggle multiple wives, feelings, and duties. She cut him slack, maybe more than he deserved, because she thought he was learning as he went. But as the years went by, he stopped growing, and patterns popped up. Janelle saw how conversations changed. Instead of listening, Kody just made the decisions. Instead of compromise, there were ultimatums. And instead of respect going both ways, it only went one way. Kody wanted people to agree with him, not to understand. And Janelle, who always paid attention, noticed something else. The rules weren't the same for everyone. Some wives could show their feelings, others were called dramatic. Some opinions counted, others were brushed off as negative. Some boundaries were respected, others were ignored. Janelle didn't need to argue to see things weren't fair. It was obvious in how time, solutions to problems, and love were handed out. Love wasn't just about feelings anymore, it was a strategy, and that bothered her. Janelle never got into plural marriage to compete. She thought it was supposed to cut down on jealousy, bring people together, and make the family stronger by being fair, but fairness was disappearing. What took its place was a pecking order. And Janelle was now in a spot she didn't ask for, the reliable wife, who was expected to need the least. She worked, she supported the family financially. She stayed calm when everyone else was emotional. And because of that, people stopped seeing what she needed. Kody started assuming Janelle would always be okay. That she didn't need anyone to tell her she was loved. That she didn't need attention or emotional support. And worst of all, that she didn't need to be a priority. Janelle didn't complain. Not because she didn't care, but because she thought complaining made her look weak. She thought being logical would save her, that reason would be enough. But not getting the emotional support you need sneaks up on you. It settles in quietly. She started feeling less like a partner, and more like someone in the background, appreciated for being stable, not loved for who she was. Conversations felt like transactions, decisions felt like they were already made, and getting intimate emotionally and physically felt like an option. Still, Janelle stayed strong. She told herself this was just part of plural marriage, that you were supposed to give things up, that it wouldn't be like this forever. But deep down, she knew something was off. Kody was getting more touchy, his patience was wearing thin, and he couldn't stand anyone disagreeing with him. When Janelle calmly questioned decisions, he didn't talk it out, he got defensive. He didn't want her point of view, he wanted her to agree with him. And to agree with him meant doing what he said. Janelle saw how people were punished for disagreeing, not always with anger, but with being ignored. Emotional distance became a weapon. Silence sent a message, and wives had to earn approval. That's when Janelle began to understand what power really looked like in the family. Kody didn't just want loyalty, he wanted to control what people thought, felt, and who they were. He wanted wives who were just like him, not ones who challenged him. And Janelle challenged him just by being herself. She was independent. She valued logic over feelings. She made her kids a priority. No apologies. And that independence started to mess with the system, because control only works if people are scared of losing approval. Janelle wasn't scared of that. She was scared of losing herself. She started noticing how often Kody called things family problems when they were really about doing what he said. How he talked about respect like it was something he was owed, not something he had to earn. And how he was never held accountable. He wanted people to understand him but rarely tried to understand them. He expected loyalty but didn't give it back. He preached about unity but created division. Janelle took all this in quietly. She didn't say anything right away. She watched and learned, and what she saw was really disturbing. The marriage depended on wives keeping themselves in check, on downplaying their needs, on blaming themselves when things got tough, and Janelle realized she'd been doing that for years, carrying emotional baggage that wasn't hers to begin with. She had been loyal. She had been supportive. She had been patient. Yet the marriage kept asking more of her while giving her less. And then she realized the thing that changed everything. This marriage didn't fall apart because the wives failed. It fell apart because the leader refused to change. Janelle saw how Kody saw independence as rebellion, how he saw boundaries as rejection, and how he thought control was the same as love. That wasn't faith, that was insecurity. And once Janelle saw that, she couldn't pretend anymore that the problem was temporary or that being patient would fix it. She wasn't mad yet, she wasn't ready to go yet, but she wasn't going to ignore what she saw anymore. She knew now that staying quiet wasn't strength, it was betraying herself. And while she still believed in faith, family, and commitment, she didn't think those things meant she had to disappear. The quiet wife had seen it all. And what she saw made one thing crystal clear: if she didn't speak up soon, she would lose more than a marriage, she would lose herself. And that's what led to the fight she never wanted but couldn't avoid. For most of her life in plural marriage, Janelle Brown thought faith should be a guide, not a rule. She figured faith was there to help when things got confusing, to bring peace when people fought, and to remind everyone why they chose this life in the first place. But somewhere along the line, faith stopped feeling like a guide and started feeling like a weight. It started small. Kody started saying that disagreements weren't just differences in opinion, but signs that someone wasn't committed enough. If a wife disagreed, he didn't just say she was wrong, he acted like she wasn't connected to God. And in a marriage based on religion, that was a big deal. Janelle noticed how often Kody used religious language to get his way. Respect became doing what you're told, leadership became bossing people around, faithfulness became just agreeing with him. And suddenly, questioning any of it felt risky. Kody talked more and more about loyalty, not as trusting each other, but as obeying him. He talked about the family like it was one person, even though it wasn't. And when wives felt uneasy, he said their feelings were just personal problems, not real concerns. Janelle paid attention. She realized that faith, which used to belong to everyone, was now only used to prop up Kody's position as the center of everything. If Kody made a choice, it was God's will. If a wife disagreed, she was causing trouble. If someone set limits, she wasn't faithful enough. And slowly, the message became clear: agree or be cut off from God. For Janelle, this was really disturbing. She always thought faith should make you stronger, not erase who you are. She thought being spiritual meant being honest, not quiet. But now, honesty got you punished and silence got you rewarded. She started asking herself questions she was always scared to even think. Why did faith only seem to matter when it backed up Kody's choices? Why were women supposed to give up everything while he could do whatever he wanted? Why did spiritual leadership look so much like trying to control everyone? The answers weren't good. Janelle saw how fear played a part, not fear of God but fear of being disliked, fear of being called disloyal, fear of being cut off from the family, emotionally or spiritually. Kody didn't have to threaten anyone. The situation did it for him. Wives learned to watch what they said, to be gentle when they criticized, to hide when they felt uncomfortable. And Janelle realized she did it too. She had excused stuff she didn't agree with. She had put up with emotional distance because she thought faith meant toughing it out. She had ignored her own needs because she didn't want to seem selfish or rebellious. But toughing it out without honesty just turns into bitterness, and bitterness started to build up. The change didn't come with a fight. It came when things became clear. Janelle started to notice how Kody acted when wives put their kids first. He took it personally, like their love for their kids took away from their loyalty to him. That bothered her because for Janelle, being a mom was the most important thing. Her kids weren't just extensions of Kody's power, they were people who needed her to protect them, keep them stable, and make them feel safe. When Kody acted like her choices were a betrayal, something changed inside her. She realized that his version of faith valued power over people, and she couldn't accept that. Faith, to Janelle, was never meant to silence a mother's feelings. It was never meant to make you choose between your husband and your kids. And it was never meant to punish women for thinking for themselves. But Kody's version did all of that. And the more he pushed for everyone to agree with him, the more Janelle understood what was really going on. Faith had become a weapon. Religious talk was being used to shut down conversation, to stop people from disagreeing, to stay in control without being held responsible. And once she saw it, she couldn't go back. She started to pull away emotionally, not because she was angry, but because she needed to protect herself. She stopped blaming herself. She stopped making excuses for him, and she stopped thinking that faith meant putting up with emotional abuse. This wasn't about rejecting God. It was about rejecting being manipulated. Janelle wasn't giving up on being spiritual. She was taking it back. For the first time, she let herself believe that you could have faith without this marriage, that God didn't want you to suffer to prove you were devoted, that obeying a man wasn't the same as being committed to God. That thought was scary and freeing, because once faith stopped keeping her quiet, the marriage started to fall apart. Kody felt it. He got more frustrated, more stubborn, more touchy. The less control he had, the harder he tried to grab it back, but his power didn't work the same way anymore because Janelle didn't think he was chosen by God, and without that, his power weakened. Janelle didn't announce she was changing. She didn't start a war. She just stopped making herself smaller. She spoke calmly. She set limits. She chose to be clear instead of comfortable, and that was enough to mess everything up. Because the system depended on her doing what she was told, on her being the one who stayed calm and took the pressure without fighting back. When she stopped doing that, the problem got too big to ignore. This wasn't about losing faith. It was about losing fear. And for Kody, that was the scariest thing of all. The marriage wasn't based on belief anymore, it was based on expectations. And expectations fall apart when people stop thinking they're sacred. Janelle hadn't left yet, but spiritually, she was already gone. And once faith stopped being used against her, she knew one thing for sure: she would never let anyone use religion to shut her up again. A spiritual divorce isn't something you do in court. No lawyers. No papers to sign. Nothing official like that. But it can hit you way harder emotionally than an actual legal split, especially when someone's always had power over you because of what you believe. For Janelle Brown, it didn't start with a fight. It started with her pulling away, quietly deciding to step back from something that didn't feel right anymore, like it wasn't safe, honest, or real. She didn't make a big deal about it, didn't threaten anyone. She just stopped pretending, and that freaked Kody out the most. For ages, their marriage was about trying to talk things out. When they disagreed, Kody expected her to explain, calm him down, and eventually just agree with him. Wives were supposed to argue, cry, or beg and then see things his way, but Janelle wasn't doing that anymore. She stopped trying to fix things when it meant giving up what she believed in. She stopped trying to make Kody get her. And she stopped thinking that just sticking it out would somehow make things better. That quiet, calm, steady, and on purpose was more upsetting than any shouting match because it meant something Kody was scared of. He couldn't get to her anymore. A spiritual divorce isn't about not caring anymore. It's about not hurting yourself to stay connected to someone who takes too much and gives too little back. Janelle wasn't saying she hated Kody. She was saying she hated how they were together. She got to a point where being emotionally invested meant constantly betraying herself. And she wasn't going to do that anymore. Kody felt like she was betraying him. He said she was giving up, leaving the family, choosing herself over everyone else. But he didn't get that Janelle wasn't leaving the family, she was leaving his control. And that's a big difference. It forced Kody to face something he'd been avoiding. His say only mattered when his wives thought it was sacred. Once they stopped believing that, his control was weak and easily broken. Janelle's refusal to play his games shook him up. He tried to get a reaction out of her, make her angry, guilty, or blame him, but she stayed calm, solid, unmoved. It wasn't that she was cold, she just knew what she wanted. She had spent years explaining herself, defending what she did, and justifying how she felt now. She knew she didn't have to keep explaining herself for wanting to protect her own feelings. And Kody didn't know what to do with that. He was used to being the center of attention, used to his wives worrying about his moods, changing how they acted to keep things peaceful. Janelle stepping away messed up the whole system. For the first time, he couldn't tell the story. He said she was being disloyal by pulling away. She said she was respecting herself. He thought they were failing by separating. She thought she was surviving. That difference showed how far apart they'd grown. Janelle wasn't looking for anyone's approval anymore. She wasn't asking for permission to feel how she felt. And she wasn't going to give up who she was to save a marriage that wasn't respectful anymore. This spiritual divorce wasn't a big show, but it was final. It was when Janelle decided that her own peace was more important than what others thought. When she stopped looking at Kody's reactions to know her worth and started trusting herself again. And the more sure of herself she became, the more Kody seemed to lose it. He got more frustrated. His words got sharper. He got impatient because without her emotions to control, he had no power. It showed a painful truth. Kody wasn't scared of losing Janelle. He was scared of losing his authority and control. Without belief is worthless. Janelle's quiet stepping away forced him to deal with what happened because he spent years demanding loyalty without making them feel safe, preaching togetherness while playing favorites. Acting like being a leader meant bossing people around. But owning up to it means thinking about things, and Kody wasn't ready for that. So instead, he got mad, he blamed her, he pointed fingers, he twisted the story, but none of it worked because Janelle wasn't playing that game anymore. She had closed the door emotionally, not out of anger, but because she had made up her mind. It wasn't bitterness. It was accepting things. She accepted that the marriage she believed in was gone, that the beliefs that made her sacrifice herself were empty because of his control, and that staying would only hurt more. It didn't ruin the marriage, it showed what it already was. And for Janelle, that was a relief. For the first time in years, she felt like herself again. Her values made sense, her faith felt personal, not forced. And she felt hopeful about the future, not stuck by expectations she never agreed to. She wasn't leaving her faith, she was leaving her fear. And Kody could feel it. He wasn't just losing a wife, he was losing influence. Losing his importance in a relationship that wasn't all about him anymore, and that was hard. Because when someone stops believing you have some kind of spiritual hold over them, your power disappears. Janelle didn't need to say she was independent. She showed it, and that was enough to shake everything Kody thought he controlled. It didn't end with a fight. It ended with something way more final, not caring about his tricks anymore. And once Janelle got there, there was no turning back. Sometimes leaving doesn't come with a party. It can be quiet after you're tired, sad, and you get that it's costing you more to stay than go. For Janelle Brown, leaving wasn't a shout. It was standing still long enough to see she was already checked out. There was nothing to save. The second she stopped thinking Kody got to tell her what to do, things flipped. She stopped waiting for a yes. She stopped being scared of a fight. And really important, she stopped feeling like she had to hold together something that was falling apart for ages. That changed things for everyone. As Janelle got her own life back, Kody began to lose it. He wasn't ready for a wife who didn't argue, beg, or try to patch things up. He always got his way by getting a rise out of people. When that was gone, so was his hold on things. Janelle being calm and sure was the loudest thing she could have done. She picked her kids, no guilt. She picked peace, no sorry. She picked seeing things clearly, no fear. And for once, Kody wasn't writing the story. Things in the family really started to show. The setup that was all about Kody's moods now looked wobbly. Because it was built on people going along with him, not respect. Janelle wasn't acting out. She just didn't want to be part of something messed up that makes a difference. Kody did what he does best, blamed others. He talked about people stabbing him in the back, not being loyal, giving up. But it didn't sound right because Janelle was showing something else. She didn't ditch the family. She stopped ditching herself. Kody couldn't beat that. As Janelle got stronger, watchers could see it had been coming for years. This woman who used to stay quiet to keep the peace was now speaking her mind. No anger, no being bitter, just truth. She didn't need to talk anyone into anything now. She knew who she was. Her belief didn't have to do with doing what a man said. It was personal. About respecting herself, being kind, and being real. She got her faith away from control and found something freeing. Faith doesn't have to hurt. Love doesn't have to be about giving in, and family doesn't have to be quiet. That's when the marriage really ended. Kody was having a hard time changing. As more wives pulled away, he got more annoyed. He kept talking about respect, but he still meant bossing people around without being responsible himself. But no one cared anymore. With no one playing his game, Kody's power fell apart. He was angry and showed he wasn't sure of himself. He was stiff and showed he was scared. He wouldn't look at himself and showed he couldn't control anything. Janelle being on her own wasn't a big show, but it was real. She made a life where she didn't need anyone's okay. She put time into her kids, her goals, and feeling steady. She stopped waiting to really start living, and she showed what being strong really means. Being strong wasn't just hanging in there anymore. It was making choices, choosing to step away from someone messing with your head, choosing not to accept love with strings attached, choosing to think your voice matters. Kody's control didn't break all at once. It was going to happen. A setup where one person is in charge can't last if people want to think for themselves. As more women left, it was clear the marriages didn't fail because the wives weren't loyal. They failed because they asked too much from people without giving anything back. Janelle's story was like a mirror for people watching. It made them think about tough stuff like faith, power, and making your own choices. It made them wonder if being devoted means losing yourself. And it pointed out how easy it is to hide control behind what's always been done. Her story wasn't about getting divorced, it was about waking up. She didn't leave because she stopped believing, she left because she started believing in herself, and that changed everything. Kody falling apart wasn't just feelings, it meant something. It showed that you can't put one man in charge of everyone's lives without him having to answer for it. Janelle being free showed what that costs. It showed that you don't find peace by giving in, that you can't force people to get along, and that love has to go both ways to last. As Janelle walked into her future, she wasn't mad, just clear. She knew she didn't need Kody to say it was okay to heal. She just had to accept what the marriage really was, and she did. That gave her something she hadn't felt in years, peace. Not the peace you get from avoiding problems, but the peace you get from living honestly. Janelle's story didn't end with a big scene, it ended with quiet strength. With a woman picking herself after years of picking everyone else. And that choice is what she'll be remembered for. Because the biggest thing she did wasn't leaving Kody. It was not letting control run her life anymore. This wasn't just a marriage falling apart. It was a pretend world falling apart. And Janelle Brown built something much better from the pieces, a life based on being free, being real, and respecting herself.